In 1971, a tiny loblolly pine seed was packed into a canvas pouch, and it was loaded onto a Saturn V rocket and blasted 240,000 miles to the lunar surface aboard Apollo 14.
Which is just wild to think about.
Right. It survived the violent G-forces of the launch, the freezing vacuum of space, and, the searing heat of reentry. And today, that exact seed is a massive, towering tree growing in the rich soil of a quiet river town in Kansas.
Standing as a living monument to a woman who was born before the airplane was even invented.
Exactly. Welcome to Atchison.
It really is a profound trajectory, isn't it? I mean, you have this biological artifact of humanity's greatest technological triumph leaving the Earth entirely.
Yeah.
And it's rooted in the exact place where one of our earliest pioneers of flight first looked up at the sky.
And that bizarre, beautiful juxtaposition is exactly why we are broadcasting to you today live, not from our usual studio, but from a little field station right here on Commercial Street in historic Atchison, Kansas.
It's a great spot.
It really is. I mean, if you listen closely, you can almost hear the auditory landscape of this town around us. We've got this heavy, humid July air rolling off the Missouri River bluffs.
Oh, you can definitely feel the humidity today.
Yeah, it's thick. And it's carrying with it the low mechanical rumble of a Union Pacific freight train crossing the river. But then layered right over that 19th century industrial sound is the high-pitched whine of a stunt plane cutting through the clouds above us.
It's like you can feel the convergence of eras just standing on a sidewalk. You have these grand, ornate Victorian mansions lining the brick-paved streets here.
Which are gorgeous, by the way.
Oh, absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Remnants of a time when Atchison was this booming steamboat and railroad hub. And yet, the entire town right now is just vibrating with the energy of modern aviation.
Because we are here for a very specific reason. This weekend, July 17th and 18th, 2026, marks the 29th annual Amelia Earhart Festival.
And, because this happens to coincide with the broader celebration of America's 250th birthday, the atmosphere out there is just charged.
It really is. But listen, we aren't here to just read a schedule of events to you. If you're listening to this deep dive, you already know the basic biography. You know she was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic.
Right, and she disappeared over the Pacific in 1937.
Exactly. Our mission today is much more structural. We are going to deconstruct the mechanics of her legacy. We want to figure out how a town of roughly 10,000 people physically and culturally sustains a global epicenter of aviation history.
And what the actual tangible connective tissue is between the propeller planes of the 1930s and the deep space astrophysics being celebrated here this weekend.
Right, because it requires looking past the leather flying cap and the goggles.
It really does. I mean, the celebrity caricature of Amelia Earhart often obscures the brutal math, the intense engineering, and the severe sociological barriers that really defined her actual life.
Yeah, it's easy to just see the icon and miss the human.
Exactly. And what Atchison does so effectively is strip away that caricature. They don't just celebrate a pilot. They analyze the architecture of perseverance.
So, for everyone listening, just settle in. We want you to experience this deep dive as if you were sitting right here on the porch with us, watching the crowds gather on Commercial Street. Let's start with the geographical and psychological bedrock, the girl from the river bluffs.
Geographically, the Earhart story begins at 223 North Terrace Street. It's this beautiful Gothic revival cottage perched directly on the bluffs overlooking the Missouri River.
Right, where she was born on July 24th, 1897.
Exactly.
I actually walked up there this morning, and the physical positioning of that house is fascinating to me.
How so?
Well, it doesn't look inward at the town, it faces outward. When you stand on that porch, you are confronted with this massive, churning, mile-wide body of water.
The Missouri River is no joke right there.
No, it's powerful, and you have this horizon that just stretches into infinity across the Missouri plains. You really have to wonder how much that specific visual field, that constant exposure to vastness wires, a developing brain to just normalize the idea of distance and motion.
Oh, environmental psychology certainly plays a role. She wasn't hemmed in by skyscrapers or dense forests. She grew up in a landscape that visually rewarded looking far away.
Yeah.
But I'd argue the socioeconomic environment inside that house is equally crucial to understanding her drive.
Oh, absolutely. It was complicated.
Very. I mean, she was born into a family with considerable social standing. Her grandfather was a prominent judge.
Right.
But her immediate family structure was highly unstable due to her father's severe struggles with alcoholism and, chronic unemployment. So the wealth was an illusion that eventually shattered.
Which fundamentally changes the narrative of who she was.
Really?
She wasn't just some bored socialite looking for a thrill. She was someone who intimately understood financial ruin and the precariousness of depending on others.
Right.
That fear of dependency is a massive and I think often ignored engine for her later ambition. But shifting back to the physical house today, this isn't just a dusty property managed by the local parks department, right?
No, not at all. The custodianship of the Birthplace Museum is incredibly specific and very intentional. The property is actually owned and maintained by the 99s, Inc.
And for those who might not know, that's the International Organization of Licensed Women Pilots.
Yes.
And I found the mechanics of this arrangement to be, honestly, the most compelling part of the museum. Because Amelia didn't just casually support this group.
No, she was a founding member in 1929 and served as its first president.
But I want to push back on the romance of that for a second.
Yeah.
Because in the 1920s, forming a women's flying organization wasn't just some cute social club.
Far from it.
It was a hostile defensive maneuver, wasn't it?
It was an absolute necessity for professional survival.
Yeah.
Because in the post-World War I era, aviation was rapidly commercializing, and the male-dominated establishment was actively trying to push women out of the cockpit.
Right. They were protecting their turf.
Exactly. They were barring women from the most lucrative air races, citing, quote-unquote, medical fragility.
Which is just absurd.
Totally absurd. And commercial airlines flat out refused to hire female pilots. So the 99s were formed to create a parallel infrastructure.
What did that look like in practice?
It meant sharing mechanical knowledge, pooling resources for aircraft rentals, and leveraging collective political power to fight discriminatory regulations.
So when you walk through the doors of 223 North Carra Street today and you see the restored 1890s wallpaper and the Victorian furniture, you aren't just in a time capsule.
Oh, no, you're really not.
The building serves as an active, forward operating base for the very organization that was built to dismantle aviation patriarchy. That is just a brilliant piece of historical continuity.
It is. It prevents the legacy from stagnating. And that active living approach to history is something the festival organizers deploy in a very visceral way on the streets during this weekend.
Yes, primarily through their historical interpreters.
Right, which brings us to Sydney Blake.
The official Earhart impersonator for the 28th and now the 29th festival. And she is a pilot herself.
Which I think provides a really necessary layer of technical authenticity.
Absolutely. But I'm curious about the cognitive effect of this. Why go through the effort of hiring an impersonator? I mean, when a 10-year-old girl or a 50-year-old man stops on the brick sidewalk to talk to a woman dressed exactly like Earhart,
Right.
a woman who has mastered her specific mid-Atlantic cadence and vocabulary, what is actually happening in the brain of that festival goer?
Well, it's a well-documented phenomenon in public history. The human brain actually struggles to empathize with static text.
Really?
Yeah. When you read that someone overcame adversity, it just registers as a sterile fact. But when you introduce a physical avatar, a living, breathing person who responds in real time.
Someone who makes eye contact.
Exactly. Someone who shifts her weight and expresses frustration, it bypasses the analytical part of the brain and triggers the social empathy centers. The historical figure suddenly gains a third dimension.
It bridges the gap between myth and mortality. Because the myth is that she was this fearless superhero.
Right? But the historical reality, which Blake and the festival heavily emphasize, is that she was terrified frequently.
She crashed a lot.
She did. She made terrible financial decisions. She faced relentless public scrutiny.
And if she is presented as flawless, she is basically useless to us as a role model.
Exactly. You can't emulate a god.
Right.
But you can emulate a flawed human being who felt intense self-doubt, who was exhausted by the media circus, but who climbed into the cockpit anyway. That is the transmission of legacy that happens during those street-level interactions.
Well, let's follow that transition from the human being to the machine, because you really can't talk about Amelia Earhart without talking about the hardware.
You really can't.
We are moving our focus from the Bluffs down to the Amelia Earhart Memorial Airport, specifically to the Amelia Earhart Hangar Museum.
And it is a phenomenal facility.
It's brand new, basically.
Yeah, it's a 17,000 square foot structure, heavily stylized with Art Deco architectural cues.
Which immediately grounds you in the visual language of the 1930s. But it's gorgeous, and the architecture is just the frame. The canvas is what sits in the center of the room. Muriel.
Yes, Muriel.
This is the world's last remaining Lockheed Electra 10E, identical to the plane Earhart flew on her final flight. Now, I really want to get into the weeds on this machine with you.
Let's do it.
Because Looking at photographs of the Electra is one thing, but standing underneath the aluminum wings of that physical aircraft completely shatters any romanticized illusions about her final journey.
Oh, it forces you to confront the brutal physics of what she was attempting.
Yeah.
The Lockheed Electra 10E was a state-of-the-art twin-engine transport plane for its time. It featured two Pratt & Whitney R1340 Wasp engines.
Heavy, powerful engines.
Very powerful. But to attempt a 29,000-mile equatorial circumnavigation, Earhart and her navigators essentially had to turn a passenger aircraft into a flying, highly volatile fuel tank.
Right. They basically ripped out all the passenger seats and installed these massive auxiliary fuel tanks right in the fuselage.
Precisely. And this fundamentally altered the aerodynamics and the weight and balance envelope of the aircraft.
So it wasn't flying the way it was designed to fly.
Not at all.
Yeah.
When fully loaded, she was taking off in a severely overweight machine. The stall speed increased, the climb rate plummeted.
And the physical exertion?
Oh, the physical exertion required to manually manipulate those flight controls in turbulent air was agonizing.
Because there were no hydraulic assist systems, right? No fly-by-wire computers.
None. It was cables, pulleys, and just raw human strength fighting against atmospheric pressure.
That is wild to think about. And then you add the navigation limitations. I mean, standing next to Muriel, you look at the cockpit and realize what they didn't have.
It's sobering.
They were navigating the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, trying to find Howland Island, which is essentially a speck of sand 1.5 miles long.
In the middle of nowhere.
Right. And they were using basic celestial navigation and a Bendix direction-finding radio loop that was notoriously finicky.
The margin for error was functionally zero.
Yeah.
If your celestial calculations were off by just a fraction of a degree, or if the atmospheric conditions scattered your radio signals, you would miss the island entirely.
Which obviously is what happened.
Right. The physical presence of Muriel in that museum doesn't just display a historical artifact. It induces a kind of retrospective claustrophobia and, honestly, awe.
Yes, claustrophobia is the perfect word.
You realize she walked into a deafening, vibrating metal tube, sat next to hundreds of gallons of aviation fuel, and just pointed the nose into the void.
It's terrifying. Truly. But, Atchison doesn't leave you stranded in that mechanical anxiety.
Thank goodness.
They have counterbalanced the heavy machinery of the hangar with these sprawling organic tributes that literally weave her memory back into the earth. So let's talk about the land art.
Right. The Amelia Earhart earthwork.
Created in 1997 by the renowned Kansas crop artist Stan Hurd.
This is an incredible piece.
It really is. For those listening, this is a 1-acre portrait of Earhart, built directly into a hillside overlooking Warnock Lake. Now, the mechanics of crop art are incredibly complex.
It's not just painting on grass.
No, you aren't just pouring paint on the ground. Hurd used permanent plantings, specific types of stone, and massive earth manipulation to create a portrait that can only truly be comprehended from above.
Right, either from a plane or from the viewing deck on an opposing hilltop.
Exactly.
And it requires a profound understanding of agronomy. He had to select vegetation that would provide the correct color contrasts.
Because you need the shadows, the highlights.
Yes. Different shades of green, brown, and gold. And he had to factor in how those plants would change throughout the seasons.
Right, because the portrait isn't static. It breathes.
It dies back in the winter and blooms again in the summer.
It's a permanent anchor to the landscape. But right next to this deep connection to the Kansas soil is something that reaches in the exact opposite direction.
The International Forest of Friendship.
Yes. This is a living memorial meant to honor individuals involved in aviation and space exploration. It has trees representing all 50 states and 36 countries.
But the centerpiece, the biological marvel of the forest, is the moon tree you mentioned at the start of the broadcast.
Let's break down how a tree from space ends up in Kansas, because this wasn't just some publicity stunt, right?
No, it was an actual, rigorous scientific experiment.
Okay, so astronaut Stuart Roosa, the command module pilot for Apollo 14, was a former U.S. Forest Service smoke jumper.
Right.
And he partnered with the Forest Service to take a canister containing hundreds of seeds, loblolly pine, sycamore, sweet gum, redwood, and Douglas fir into lunar orbit.
The scientific objective there was to observe whether the microgravity environment and the exposure to deep space radiation would mutate the seeds or affect their germination rates once they were returned to Earth.
And spoiler alert for you listening, they grew just fine.
Perfectly fine.
But placing one of those specific loblolly pines here in Atchison is a masterstroke of thematic curation.
It really is.
What is the philosophical argument being made by placing an Apollo 14 moon tree and a memorial to fallen astronauts right down the street from the Lockheed Electra?
Well, I think the argument is that the timeline of human exploration is a single, unbroken continuum. We so often compartmentalize history, right? We think propeller planes belong to the 30s, rockets belong to the 60s.
Right, we separate them into different buckets.
Exactly. But the mechanical evolution from crossing the Atlantic Ocean to crossing the vacuum of space is driven by the exact same psychological imperative.
The drive to go further.
Yes.
Yeah.
The math changes, the propulsion systems change, but the boundary-pushing ethos remains completely constant.
That's a great way to put it.
By planting the moon tree here, Atchison is asserting that Amelia Earhart's DNA, her willingness to risk everything for the sake of discovery, is fundamentally embedded in every astronaut who straps into a capsule.
They are mapping the genealogy of courage.
I love that phrase. Yes.
That is incredibly powerful. But listen, as heady and philosophical as all this history is, we have to talk about the reality of what happens here when the sun goes down.
Oh, yes. The tone shifts completely.
Because on Friday, July 17th, Atchison doesn't just reflect on history. They throw a massive town-wide party.
The entire civic infrastructure shifts gears from solemn remembrance to a very vibrant cultural festival.
And the logistics of this are wild. You have a town of 10,000 people suddenly absorbing tens of thousands of visitors.
It's a logistical marvel.
The streets downtown are closed off, shuttle buses are constantly rotating from the peripheral parking lots, and the historic Santa Fe Depot basically becomes the central nervous system of the event.
Right, and honestly, the economic mechanics of heritage tourism are on full display here.
Oh, absolutely. The depot recently underwent a massive remodel, housing the tourism center, a local history museum, and a gorgeous new tasting room.
It's an engine of economic revitalization fueled entirely by this legacy.
And that economic engine reaches its peak on Friday night at the riverfront.
Yes, the Friday night ticketed concert.
The lineup for 2026 is an absolute powerhouse of 1990s country music royalty, which perfectly matches the warm, nostalgic Americana vibe of a summer night in the Midwest.
It really fits the mood.
They've brought in Lori Morgan and Black Hawk, with Paige Griffey opening.
And, Lori Morgan's inclusion is particularly interesting from a cultural standpoint.
How so?
Well, she is a foundational figure in female country music. She was the first woman in her genre to begin her career with 3 consecutive platinum albums.
Which, we have to remember, in the pre-streaming era of the early 90s, required moving millions of physical CDs and cassettes.
It required massive, widespread cultural resonance.
Yeah.
She was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry at 24. She literally grew up backstage at the Opry as the daughter of George Morgan.
Right. But what makes her music endure, songs like What Part of No, 5 Minutes, and Something in Red, is her specific vocal phrasing.
It's iconic.
It is. It has this lustrous, almost operatic quality, combined with lyrics that are unapologetically grounded in female autonomy and emotional resilience.
There is a thematic echo there, intentional or not, with Earhart's own fierce independence.
Absolutely. And following her, you have Black Hawk, a band that fundamentally altered the sonic landscape of country radio when they debuted in 1993.
Yeah, they sold over 7 million albums by bringing this incredibly tight 3-part vocal harmony to the genre.
Their debut album went double platinum. Songs like Goodbye Says It All had this huge crossover appeal because the instrumentation and the harmonies leaned almost into classic rock and pop.
But the songwriting remained deeply rooted in country storytelling.
Exactly.
It's the perfect sonic backdrop for a diverse crowd that has traveled from all over the world. But practically speaking, for anyone listening who is planning to attend, this requires some logistical navigation.
It does. We are your local guides today, so here are the ground rules for the Friday night riverfront concert.
Take notes, folks.
Right. First, it is a ticketed event. You're looking at $25 if you secure them in advance, or $30 at the gate. And here is the crucial piece of infrastructure. They strictly enforce a no coolers and no outside beverages policy on Friday night.
The perimeter is very secure.
It is, but don't worry, the internal economy of the festival has you covered. There is a massive array of food vendors, local barbecue, and concession stands right on the grounds. You will not go hungry.
Definitely not. And that highly structured Friday night really sets the stage for the pivot on Saturday.
Because as the sun rises on July 18th, the festival transitions from a contained musical event into a sprawling, free-to-the-public civic celebration.
Saturday is the big shebang.
The big shebang. And this is where the festival directly honors the scientific legacy of Amelia Earhart through the 2026 Pioneering Achievement Award.
Right.
Now, festival coordinator Jacques Prégat has explicitly stated that they intentionally try to give this award to women in wildly different fields each year.
They aren't just handing it to pilots every year.
No. And the recipient for 2026 is going to make some people do a double take.
They are honoring Dr. Douila de Mello,
An internationally acclaimed astrophysicist.
former NASA associate scientist at the Goddard Space Flight Center and current professor at the Catholic University of America.
Her resume is staggering. She is deeply involved with the Hubble Space Telescope, mapping the formation and evolution of galaxies. She even discovered a supernova, SN 1997D.
Which is incredible.
Now let's dig into the science here, because discovering a supernova isn't just looking through a telescope and seeing a flash, is it?
Not at all. It involves complex spectroscopy, analyzing light curves, and understanding the chemical composition of exploding stars millions of light years away.
Mind-bending stuff.
Truly, when a massive star exhausts its nuclear fuel, its core collapses under its own gravity, triggering a rebound explosion that can briefly outshine an entire galaxy.
Wow.
And by identifying and studying these events, astrophysicists like Dr. de Mello can measure cosmic distances and actually map the expansion rate of the universe itself.
Which brings me to the obvious analytical question. I can play devil's advocate here for you listening. Why is a festival dedicated to a woman who flew a propeller plane over the Atlantic honoring an extragalactic physicist?
It seems like a leap at first glance.
Right. What is the functional thematic link between a Bendix radio loop in 1937 and the advanced camera for surveys on the Hubble Space Telescope today?
Well, the link is the methodology of navigation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Earhart was using rudimentary celestial navigation. She was literally measuring the angles of stars with a sextant to determine her position on Earth.
Right.
Dr. de Mello is using advanced orbital telescopes to determine Earth's position in history relative to the rest of the cosmos.
Ah, I see.
They are both fundamentally engaged in cartography. The only difference is the scale of the map.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it, the methodology of navigation. And Dr. de Mello isn't just focused on deep space, is she? She is actively trying to alter the trajectory of the next generation right here on Earth.
Yes, through her nonprofit organization, Mordadas Estrelas, or Women of the Stars.
This is a crucial part of why she is receiving the award. She founded this organization to specifically target the deep socioeconomic and cultural barriers that prevent young women, particularly in her native Brazil, from entering STEM fields.
And the barriers are systemic.
Very.
In many developing nations, and honestly, even here in the U.S., girls are culturally steered away from hard sciences early in their education.
Yeah, you have a lack of visible role models.
A lack of access to advanced mathematics in underfunded schools, and just pervasive implicit biases that suggest engineering and physics are male domains.
So Mudas Estrelas directly intervenes by providing mentorship, resources, and visibility, proving that a career in astrophysics is attainable.
She's essentially doing in 2026 what the 99s were doing in 1929.
Right. She's building parallel infrastructure to bypass patriarchal gatekeeping.
Exactly, and festival goers can actually hear her speak. She is headlining a symposium at Benedictine College at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday.
It proves that the festival organizers aren't just resting on the laurels of history, you know? They are actively funding and promoting the intellectual frontier of the future.
It creates a beautiful dichotomy for the Saturday attendees. You can spend your morning engaging in high-level academic discussions on galactic evolution.
And then step outside into the quintessential American summer festival.
Exactly.
It is sensory overload in the best way possible. You walk down Commercial Street, and the sidewalks are packed with arts and crafts vendors, local artisans, and a dedicated kids zone.
And the food.
Oh, the food. The smell of funnel cakes and smoked brisket from the food trucks just hangs in the air. But then the physics of flight are violently reintroduced to the weekend.
You're talking about the afternoon aerobatic show over the river.
Right. You hear the roar of high-performance engines before you even see them.
It shakes your chest.
It really does. You have stunt pilots in highly modified aircraft performing loops, barrel rolls, and hammerhead stalls right over the Missouri River.
And from an engineering standpoint, watching modern aerobatic planes pull 8, 9, or 10 Gs.
Forces that would render an untrained person completely unconscious.
Instantly. It is a stark reminder of how far material science and aerodynamics have advanced since Earhart wrestled with the heavy, unassisted controls of her Lockheed Electra.
It really highlights the danger and the extreme physical toll of flight, turning the sky itself into a theater of physics.
It does, which leads us perfectly into the grand finale.
Yes, the Saturday night riverfront experience. Now let's give our listeners the final set of logistical rules because this is important.
Very important.
Unlike Friday, Saturday night down on the banks of the Missouri River is completely free.
Free to the public.
And in a total reversal of the previous night, coolers are absolutely allowed.
Just no glass containers.
Right, no glass. But this completely changes the dynamic. It becomes a massive communal picnic.
You have thousands of people throwing blankets on the grass, sitting in lawn chairs, opening their coolers as the brutal heat of the July sun finally breaks.
It's just magic. The auditory landscape shifts again. The roar of the aerobatic planes is gone. The country music amps are turned off.
You just have the murmur of thousands of conversations.
The sound of the river against the banks and the crickets in the bluffs. And then the sky detonates.
The concert in the sky.
It is a massive, meticulously choreographed fireworks display. And the chemistry of it, the strontium burning deep red, the barium burning green, the titanium creating those brilliant white flashes.
It all reflects off the dark surface of the river.
And the concussive booms echo off the exact bluffs where Amelia Earhart's childhood home sits.
It is the great equalizer of the weekend.
How do you mean?
Well, you have aviation historians, local shop owners, kids who just met an Amelia impersonator, and an astrophysicist who maps galaxies, all sitting shoulder to shoulder in the dark.
Doing exactly what humanity has done for millennia.
Exactly. They are looking up.
And as they look up, the inevitable question arises, why does this endure? We are nearly a century removed from her final flight.
The mystery of her disappearance has been analyzed to death.
So why does a town of 10,000 people throw a multi-million-dollar international festival for her every single year?
I would argue that Atchison's survival as a cultural hub depends on recognizing that Earhart is no longer just a historical figure.
What is she then?
She is a psychological archetype.
Yeah.
Think about it. We live in an era where the globe is entirely mapped by satellites.
Right.
We carry supercomputers in our pockets that can pinpoint our location to the square meter. Our daily lives are highly predictable, digitized, and largely insulated from the raw chaos of the natural world.
We basically suffer from a deficit of the unknown.
Exactly. And Earhart represents the antidote to that modern malaise. She embodies the primal human instinct to look at a map, locate the blank spaces at the edges, and intentionally step into the void.
Fully aware of the lethal risks involved.
Right. She validates the human need for dangerous, unscripted exploration.
As she famously said, the most effective way to do it is to do it.
Such a great quote.
And that quote isn't about flying airplanes, is it? It is a fundamental thesis on overcoming the paralysis of overanalysis. It is a demand for action in the face of fear.
And as long as human beings continue to face internal and external barriers, we will require physical spaces like Atchison and historical anchors like Earhart to remind us of our own capacity for audacity.
So as the fireworks fade and the crowds start to pack up their lawn chairs, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. We've traced a massive chronological arc today.
We really have.
We started in a Victorian house overlooking a river in 1897. We climbed into a volatile, overweight propeller plane over the Pacific in 1937. We sent a pine seat to the moon in 1971.
And this weekend, we are honoring a woman who uses orbital telescopes to chart the explosive deaths of stars millions of light years away.
The trajectory is accelerating.
It really is.
It is. So here's the hypothetical for you. If Amelia Earhart were alive today, standing on the brick streets of Atchison, looking at the moon trees and shaking hands with astrophysicists, where would she point her compass next?
That's the million-dollar question.
What is the blank space on the map that would compel her to risk everything today? Is it the deepest trenches of the ocean? The uncharted neural pathways of the human brain? Or the colonization of deep space?
I suspect she would look at wherever society tells us we are not allowed to go, and she would immediately start building a machine to take her there.
The frontier is just the place where the barrier currently sits.
Well said.
Well, the Union Pacific freight train is rumbling across the river bridge again, shaking the windows here at the little station on Commercial Street. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of legacy.
It has been an absolute privilege to unpack the mechanics of this history with you.
We hope this broadcast hasn't just given you a list of dates, but has allowed you to feel the heavy summer air, understand the brutal physics of early aviation, and appreciate the cosmic scale of the scientific work being honored here. So mark your calendar for the third weekend in July. Get in your car, drive through the rolling hills of Kansas, head down to the riverfront in Atchison, and become part of the story yourself.